Communist China continues to violate human rights and religious freedom while the trial of Catholic dissident Jimmy Lai drags on. Congressman Chris Smith is here to react. And the Vatican issues a new document on papal primacy and ecumenism. This after Pope Francis repeats a slur directed at gay seminarians and priests. Father Gerald Murray is here with analysis. And parliamentary elections just wrapped up in the European Union, and the power is shifting. What do these results mean to the future of Europe? Nile Gardiner of the Heritage Foundation will tell us. And why is a movie about the Eucharist getting a second release? Producer Jim Wahlberg tells me the world over begins right now.
Now, Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me an X post. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. Lots to cover. I want to get right to it. Human rights and religious freedom continue to be suppressed in communist China as the trial of Catholic dissident and free speech activist Jimmy Lai continues. Meanwhile, here in the United States, at least 7 pro-life activists have been sentenced to federal prison for being accused of blocking the entrance to an abortion clinic in D.C. back in 2020. Joining me to discuss this and much more, U.S. Congressman from New Jersey, co-chair of the House Pro-Life Caucus, Chris Smith. Congressman,
thank you
for being here. Pleasure to see you. It's been a while. Before we dive in, there was a major event on Capitol Hill. We could tell from all the traffic trying to get here. President Trump was on the Hill. He met with Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate, or Republicans in the House and Senate, rather. Your reaction to this visit? I was stunned that Romney and Mitch McConnell ended up attending that meeting.
Well, I think the good news is we are uniting as a party, as a people. I mean, things were far better off when Trump was president. Biden's administration has been an unmitigated disaster, both economically and on the moral issues. I've never seen somebody who is so obsessed with promoting abortion at home and abroad. He is the abortion president, and there's no doubt about it. He links it to every single policy, including forcing the Veterans Administration to provide venues for abortions in pro-life states like Texas and other states where they've passed good, solid right-to-life legislation. So I think there's a recognition that we need real leadership on the world stage as well as domestically, and we don't have it now.
Okay, I want to talk about this ongoing trial, and we've been covering this for a long time, of Catholic activist Jimmy Lai, a freedom fighter in his country, a media magnate who now has been incarcerated for many years. The prosecution rested this week. The trial will resume in July. Now, Lai is in Hong Kong. He's facing charges of violating a Chinese national security law. Trial is nearing the 100-day mark. And we should mention, Jimmy Lai is in very poor health. He's been diagnosed with high blood pressure during his incarceration. He has pleaded not guilty to 2 charges of conspiring to collude with foreign forces and 1 count of conspiring to publish seditious material. Now, if he is found guilty, he could face life in prison. Right. Congressman Smith, you and others have lobbied the Secretary of State here in the United States to advocate for Jimmy Lai. Have you heard any news about that request? Where is the United States on this man's freedom?
When it comes to human rights in China, unfortunately, the Biden administration and Secretary of State Blinken say almost nothing. You know, they'll mention it as a passing thought rather than as a central component of our foreign policy vis-a-vis the Chinese Communist Party. Xi Jinping is committing genocide against the Uyghurs, against the Tibetan Buddhists. He is crushing Christians, including Catholics, throughout China. Yeah. And Jimmy Lai, and I had a hearing, frankly, that had his son, Sebastian, come and testify, and he was brilliant, calling for the release of his father and calling on the world, including the United States and UK, because he's
where's the UK? He's a UK citizen.
He's a UK citizen.
Where are they on?
And I even wrote a letter to the Prime Minister saying, advocate on behalf of Jimmy Lai. He's a human rights advocate with very few equals in the world. A group of us have put his name forward for the Nobel Peace Prize, believing that if anybody should get it, somebody who has spoken truth to power through his media as well as through his voice.
And his example.
And his example. He could have fled Hong Kong.
Right.
He had the wherewithal. He stayed there because he wants a free and democratic Hong Kong, not another manifestation of Xi Jinping's dictatorship.
Well,
so our administration has to do far more. Maybe they've conveyed something in private. There needs to be a daily outreach to the Chinese Communist Party on behalf of dissidents like the great Jimmy Lai.
He's 76 years
Yes,
old.
yes.
I mean, it looks like he's going to face life in prison. Can he even get a fair trial?
No.
I mean, has the prosecution discovered anything of merit here?
No.
Or is this just the kangaroo court that we imagined?
In China, throughout, mainland China, and now in Hong Kong, if you're accused, you're guilty. That's just the way the Chinese Communist Party does it.
Yeah.
It's a matter of how long are you going to spend time in prison, which is why there needs to be economic sanctions. I've introduced a bill that would take away most favored nation status. It's called PNTR now, permanent, because Clinton, and I just wrote a piece that the Wall Street Journal published just a few weeks ago.
I'm going to ask you about it,
Okay, that when we delinked human rights from trade, we said, do whatever you want with your dissidents, with your religious believers.
You particularly said, I'll jump ahead here. At the end of May, when the Hong Kong High Court handed down that landmark judgment of those 14 prominent pro-democracy politicians, they charged them with conspiracy to commit subversion. And as you say, once you're charged, you're guilty in China.
Guilty.
But you say, and I'm going to find it here, in the Wall Street Journal piece, that in 1994, Bill Clinton lost China.
That's right.
When he decoupled most favored nation status from human rights. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, there was no doubt after Tiananmen Square, there was a understanding at long last, because I've been working on human rights since I got elected in 1981. And there was an understanding that this dictatorship is a menace, obviously, to its own people, but also to the world. As they grow and they get a military power and the ability to project that power, they will be a menace in the region and someday to the world. In 1994, Bill Clinton, May 26, 1994 to be exact, delinked trade from human rights. And when he did that, he gave them the green light to destroy, punish, murder, because they execute so many of their prisoners. They use torture with impunity. They had the one child per couple policy with forced abortion. And when it comes to faith, unless you comport with the Chinese Communist Party's belief about faith, which means Xi Jinping tells you no faith.
Xi Jinping is God.
You're crushed, right? And he delinked it, and that's when we lost China. And, there were a lot of us who were outraged. I did a press conference. C-SPAN carried it on May 26, 1994. I couldn't believe it because I really thought, at least on this one, Clinton is getting it right. I didn't agree with his other policies. Here he was getting it right because previously he had accused George Herbert Walker Bush, the president, of siding with tyrants, including China. And then he turns around, then he sides with them like nobody else ever has.
Wow, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
And Jimmy Lai, just to put a bow around Jimmy's particular case, this is a Catholic convert, a media mogul. I mean, he was really, it's hard for people to understand, I think, outside of Hong Kong. He owned the biggest daily newspaper and media concerns in the country, in Hong Kong, and which really was a force. They needed to shut that down because he was reporting on the pro-democracy efforts. And his Catholic faith became a real force for his activism and his belief that people should be free, both with their mouths and with their minds and souls and
You
hearts.
just said that better than I could ever say, because that's exactly what he did.
But summarize for people what he represents to the others who are yearning for freedom there in China.
Well, he is an example of courage, of being willing to be suppressed, and in this case, probably jailed for the rest of his life. He is maltreated. And frankly, if the Western countries, starting with the United States, followed closely by the UK, fail to speak up, we become complicit because we are enabling, because we're providing them a market for their exports. Without their exporting, they don't survive economically. And that's why my new bill says we'll take away that ability unless they ameliorate their human rights abuses.
You think you might be able to get that through if the Republicans take House, Senate, and Trump returns to the White House?
I think there's a very good probability we can. Right now, the Biden administration is dead set against it. So that's, even if we passed it House and Senate, he would veto it.
Okay. You recently, and I love this story, you recently proposed a bipartisan bill to rename Hong Kong Economic Trade, the office, the street that it resides on, Jimmy Lai Way.
Exactly.
Have you heard any response from the Chinese government?
No, they don't like it, obviously.
I'll bet.
They don't like it at all. And we are pushing hard to get that passed. We've done things like that before, and I think it raises the question, okay, every day when you're going into your office, Chinese diplomat / Communist Party leader, you have to see Jimmy Lai's name.
Well, the Chinese communists want us to forget and erase people like Jimmy Lai from our memory.
Exactly.
It's very important that we fight that and continue to broadcast the truth. And that's certainly what this place was founded for. So we will continue to do so.
And Raymond, just let me say very quickly, I got a bill passed a full year ago to go after the heinous practice of forced organ harvesting.
Awful.
Where they kill tens of thousands of average age 28-year-olds to sell their organs. They get 2 or 3 organs per person. It's right out of the playbook of Joseph Mengele from the Nazi Germany era. Just total, and I had 3 hearings on it. I heard from one doctor who actually did the horrific procedure, who was mea culpa, remorseful.
Right.
But it's a situation where, and I can't get it out of the Senate. It's sitting in the Senate right now for over a year, and it would sanction those who do it. It would hold criminally liable those people who knowingly go and procure those organs.
And this is the problem, Congressman Smith, and you've once again targeted it. When a country can't condemn something as outrageous as organ harvesting of another people, it's all because of financial motive and wanting to keep those trade dollars coming from China. That is blood money. That's blood money and slave labor. So all these people talking about slavery and they're worried about this and ripping down statues, this is a slave regime happening today.
Right now.
And a maiming of people on a scale of which we really don't see anywhere else in the world but China. It's an outrage. I want to move on and talk about the Vatican-Chinese agreement, this secret agreement. Is this part of the reason why one never hears from the Vatican about Jimmy Lai's case, or frankly, any of the cases of the other people who are, many of them Catholic, who are yearning for freedom and caught up in this Kafka-esque trial system?
Well, Cardinal Zen wrote a brilliant op-ed for the New York Times, and he called out the Vatican to give over powers to Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party to select bishops, to control the church. Yes, the Vatican gets veto power, but when have they exercised that? When a name is put forward? That kind of coordination, complicity, call it whatever you want, accommodation with an anti-God dictatorship is outrageous. And you're right. Where is the Vatican's voice when it comes to Jimmy Lai and all these other great human rights leaders?
You spoke to Paroline, the Vatican Secretary of State,
before
that deal was consummated. What did he tell you?
Well, they took in what I gave him. I was and still am the Chinese China Commission chairman, a bicameral commission here in Washington, and said, you're undermining the underground Catholic Church, which is made up of the most amazing men and women. I met with Bishop Xu of Baoding Province in the 1990s. He had spent 30 years in prison as part of the underground church. I never met someone with such clear-eyed, even love for his opponent, who tortured him and kept him in prison all those years. He said he prays for his enemies.
I know they've abandoned all those people.
And they've abandoned the underground church. I'm amazed at it, and it's been a unmitigated disaster.
No, it's a heartbreak, and it should be a heartbreak to everybody watching the program.
Yes.
When you go into church, we have the luxury of reading the apostolic words that were passed down to us and protected, inspired words of God. These poor people are reading this defiled and debased version of the gospel where Xi Jinping and communist doctrine is woven into the teachings of Jesus.
And you know what they call that? Synodization.
Right.
It's got a name, and I've had hearings on it, where they, not just for the Catholics, but all faiths, they've rewritten the Bible.
Perversion of faith.
And they take out certain aspects of it and certain passages in order to promote Xi Jinping's ideology.
Congressman Smith, before we run out of time, this month marks the 2nd anniversary of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
I want to get your reaction to the 7 pro-life activists who have been sentenced to federal prison. They've all been convicted of blocking the door of an abortion clinic in D.C. in 2020. The sentences ranged from 21 to 57 months. Lauren Handy, this poor woman, is facing nearly 5 years in the federal pen. Now, the Justice Department says these demonstrators violently blocked the entrance to this clinic. The Thomas More Law Center, representing Mrs. Handy, says the protests were peaceful. What is your take on the severity, the length of these sentences, particularly when compared to BLM protesters, the pro-Palestinian riots we've been seeing? Your take on all of this?
It is absolutely persecution based on viewpoint.
Why?
Because these people are pro-life. The administration, the Biden administration, is, again, the most pro-abortion administration ever that we've had. And this is another way of saying to Planned Parenthood and the other abortion clinics, if anybody is out there doing nonviolent civil disobedience, a sit-in, for example, we'll throw the book at it. I led the effort back in 1993 against Chuck Schumer. He was then a House member. He wrote the FACE Act, Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. And they lied about what it would do. And here was the thing. It said force or threat of force, and that's basic language from civil rights. But then they added mere physical obstruction. So the staple of the civil rights movement was sit-ins, physical obstruction in front of a door, and that goes for labor unions. And when they go to that point and they're picketing, the only ones who get criminalized the way we are as pro-lifers under FACE are all these wonderful, in many cases, sidewalk counselors.
But FACE covers churches and crisis pregnancy centers, don't they?
That was added. Yeah, it's not being implemented by this administration, but that was added because we did put up such a fight.
Right.
They said, okay, we'll apply it to churches. I said, don't apply it anywhere.
Right.
Because it's a wrongful law.
Well, they don't enforce that.
And they don't enforce it.
I mean, they've got crisis pregnancy centers being bombed.
Bombed and defaced, and where's the prosecutions there? And that is violence.
Very slow. They're
Very
coming
slow.
along.
And I wrote a letter to the top people in the administration about two of the women who have very severe health problems who are not getting the attention. And they wrote back and said, well, where's your Privacy Act form to request this? I mean, it's just like, this is a matter of public policy being carried out privately against these people who are suffering so immensely. Civil disobedience, as long as it's nonviolent, has been a staple of reform in this country. The FACE Act, and here's another thing that nobody knows about with the FACE Act. If you get fined, where does the money go? It doesn't go to the U.S. Treasury. It goes to the abortion clinic.
Really?
So they go after your 401k and all of your savings, your house, because they can really go after you with ruinous lawsuits and ruinous fines. It's going to these people who every day decapitate, dismember, and chemically poison an unborn baby.
I wonder if it works the other way around. So if you block access to a church or lob the head off of the Virgin Mary in the front yard, do those monies revert to the church, the fines?
They don't enforce. It's selective prosecution, but it shouldn't even be a prosecution. The FACE law is one of the worst laws I have ever seen. I've been in Congress 44 years. When and even when the bankruptcy bill came up, there was a big push by Schumer to make sure, and we beat him, to make sure that nobody could ever get out from under who has been accused and convicted of a FACE violation.
Congressman, the U.S. Supreme Court just ruled today unanimously to reject the efforts to restrict access to the abortion pill mifepristone. Now, the ruling focused not really on the merits, it focused on who had standing. In this case, it was pro-life doctors and activists, and the court said they didn't have the standing. Mifepristone, as you know, is the most common form of terminating pregnancies today and of abortion. This really didn't touch on the merits, though. Do you think they're going to challenge this again?
Yes, I do. There's already 3 states looking to challenge it, Missouri, Idaho, and Kansas. And there the focus would be on the women who have been harmed. The FDA acknowledges that 1 out of every 25 women who take this abortion pill that literally starves her baby to death. I ask people during debate, do you know how the abortion pill works? It prevents nutrition from getting to the unborn child, and he or she then die by starvation. That's how it works. So they're already now moving. I think the Alliance Defending Freedom did a magnificent job defending on behalf of the physicians,
Right.
And it made it through all the courts. And we thought, standing, you're going to, on that technicality, where the FDA had really circumvented their own process to get this to market, and that started with Bill Clinton as well.
Yeah.
He sent his FDA commissioner when he got elected to go and bring that terrible killing pill to the United States.
And it hasn't gotten nearly enough press coverage. But just this summer, the Biden administration has opened up that abortion pill to every pharmacy in the United States. And you have major chains now carrying it who did not before. Walgreens and Target in select markets, New York and in California, and then they're rolling it out to other states. Final question. What impact will that have on, I mean, you know, the pro-life movement in years past would pick it outside of abortoirs. You can't pick it outside of every CVS.
Yes, right. It has to be reversed. It can be reversed. You know, this administration, again, is looking for every way imaginable, domestically or internationally, to kill unborn children. I've never seen such an obsession with death as I do with this administration. I find it mind-boggling. And to now empower the CVS's and Walgreens and all the others to just handing this out. And there's already numerous stories of how deleterious this is to a woman's psychological health.
Yeah.
To see the baby that those pills have just starved to death. So again, this obsession with killing our own children. You know, birth is the event that happens to all of us. It's not the beginning of life. And, you know, ultrasound has shattered the myth about the life of an unborn child. It's an amazing, miraculous life of growth and development, sucking their thumbs while still in utero. And now we're giving pills that will cause that child to starve to death.
Congressman Chris Smith, we thank you for
Violence.
coming in, and we will check in with you in the days ahead.
Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it so much.
The Vatican released a new document on papal primacy and ecumenism this week, while the Pope stirred more controversy by using a slur against gay seminarians. Here with analysis of these stories and more is canon lawyer and priest of the Archdiocese of New York, not to mention a member of our papal posse, Father Gerald Murray. Thank you for being with us, Father. I've got to start with this new document coming out of the Vatican. It's called the Bishop of Rome. It deals with papal primacy, that is the role and authority of the Pope, and ecumenical dialogue. Now, it's a study document, and it seems to me it's a meditation on John Paul II's Ut Unum Sint, his encyclical on the papacy and trying to reach out to other churches and the role of the Pope. You've read the document. Why do you think it's being released now?
Well, this document has been in preparation for a number of years because this is part of the ongoing ecumenical dialogue with various Protestant and Orthodox churches. So it's not unexpected that they would come out with a document because the purpose of these studies is to produce a text which then can be further studied and then possible agreements arrived at. So it really is an ongoing process. The question, of course, is what conclusions and what things does the document think significant enough to talk about? And that's where the controversy lies.
Yeah. Well, among other things, the document calls for a clearer description of the duties of the Pope with emphasis on his role as Bishop of Rome. There's a further explanation of infallibility, the ongoing need for ecumenical dialogue. Father, is there anything here that strikes you unusual or particularly new here?
Well, what's concerning is the attempt to re-examine the definitions at the First Vatican Council, and then, as it says, a rereading or a re-lecture or a reinterpretation of the Church's teaching regarding the universal jurisdiction of the Pope and possibly also infallibility. These things, of course, are rejected by Protestant and Orthodox churches. They don't believe that the Pope has immediate and universal jurisdiction over all the baptized. And papal infallibility is not embraced by Protestants and Orthodox. So I'm always afraid when Rome says we have to take a look at what's been previously defined and then reread it in the light of subsequent developments, because rereading can be seen as a euphemism all about as a rewriting.
Right.
And that's not what we need.
Father, Pope Francis appears to have gone back to the well of controversy this week. 2 weeks ago, you'll remember he apologized for using a gay slur in front of Italian bishops. Well, this week, on Tuesday, He did it again. He used a derogatory term, the same one, for homosexuality when talking to Roman priests. He allegedly said, and I quote, "There is an air of faggotry in the Vatican," and that gay men should not be admitted to the seminary. Father, the Vatican quickly apologized the first time. What do you make of this second reference? What does it tell us? And isn't it interesting, though, that "who am I to judge" was held up as a type of dogma? What of this?
Well, this is all very stupefying, if I can say that. The Pope uses a very vulgar expression. His spokesman apologizes profusely, said no intent to offend. And then within 2 weeks, the Pope is using the exact same language. I'm not quite sure why the Pope does this. You don't need to use pejorative terms to talk about the problem of homosexuality and candidates for the seminary and the role that seminaries have in screening out people who have a problem with homosexuality. So I know the Pope likes to be provocative, and following the last incident, a number of writers noted that he was famous for using vulgarities, and it was something that is regrettable when it's used in this kind of forum. So I don't know what to say. You think after a spokesman apologized that the apology meant he's not going to do it again, but then that's what happened.
Right. Well, then there's a cleanup going on, which is rather curious. The day after this slur was allegedly uttered, Jesuit Father James Martin rushes in, who has a homosexual ministry. He met with Pope Francis, and in an ex-post, he writes the following. He's kneeling in front of the Pope, and he says, "I was honored to meet with Pope Francis for an hour-long conversation today at Casa Santa Marta. With his permission to share this, the Holy Father said he's known many good, holy, and celibate seminarians and priests with homosexual tendencies. Once again, he confirmed my ministry to LGBTQ people and showed his openness and love to the LGBTQ community." Father James Martin, June 12th. Is this damage control by the Pope's unofficial comms director? And again, the Pope seems to be saying two different things here.
Well, this is Father Martin putting the most positive spin from his point of view on now two statements in which the Pope is saying that there's a problem with homosexuality in seminaries and in the Curia. And now he's saying that the Pope, praises those with a homosexual tendency who are, living celibacy, living a good life. The issue here is not the individual person, of course. The issue is the criteria for discerning who can serve as a celibate priest in the Catholic Church. And the Pope said quite clearly, it was in a document he approved early in his pontificate, that those with deep-seated homosexual temptation or tendencies should not be admitted to the seminary. He re-said that again a couple of weeks ago. This is an area where the Pope has to speak with one voice, because Father Martin is basically saying if you have a problem with homosexuality, it's not an obstacle to entering the seminary, and yet the Pope has said just that.
Yeah, it's very confusing to the people at home watching, or to people outside the church trying to make sense of this, which sort of relates to this next story. Pope Francis is receiving a group of comedians from the U.S. on June 14th, Father. This cultural exchange will include Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, Jim Gaffigan, Whoopi Goldberg, Tig Notaro, Chris Rock, and others. Also on the list is that noted American Jesuit comic, Father James Martin. I don't know why he's on the list, but he's there. Father, the Pope has talked about the power of art and comedy to create a more empathetic and a more sympathetic world. The intention of this meeting is to, quote, celebrate the unity of human diversity, according to the Vatican. Your thoughts on what this is and why meet with these comics, high profile, not only from the United States, around the world?
Well, this strikes me as the kind of like, we're the same as the world. We like comedians, so we're going to have a meeting and show how much we appreciate them. The problem here, of course, is this is a select group. I didn't notice any conservative comedians from the United States like Greg Gutfeld. He wasn't invited. And I'm also wondering, why is it that comedians who are propagandists for abortion were invited? Would they invite comedians who were, issuing gay slurs, for instance? I don't think so. Let's get to the point here. The world of culture draws its inspiration from different sources. The churches say, draw your inspiration from the gospel, from the life of Christ and the saints. we shouldn't be tagging along and saying people who use quite often vulgarities and say things that are very objectionable, that we want to bask in their fame, so we're going to invite them to the Vatican. I don't think that's a good policy.
Well, somebody asked me the other day, why do you think the Pope keeps using this slur in public? I said, well, he's meeting with these comedians. Maybe he's trying out some new edgy material. I don't know. But it seems to me the double talk coming out of the Vatican is laughable enough. We don't need comics advising anybody, but we'll see how all this shakes out and if the Pope gets any, fun jokes or coverage out of this. But an interesting ecumenical story this week, coming just before the release of that Vatican document on ecumenism, the Southern Baptist Convention has voted to oppose IVF, in vitro fertilization. Now, Father, this has long been a sticking point, a point of division between Catholics and Protestants where, Catholics sort of parted ways with their separated brethren on this issue of IVF. Could this unite the pro-life movement in a way perhaps we haven't seen before?
I think it can, because it's a recognition by the Baptists now that morality has to coordinate with reality. The reality is, once you're conceived, once the sperm and the ovum have been united, and we have that newly conceived human being, that's an independent person. That person is dependent physically for its life on the mother and will grow in the womb. But in vitro fertilization, the Catholic Church has always taught that it's wrong. It's both immoral in what it produces. And then a terrible side effect, of course, is that many children are aborted because not all of the fertilized eggs are then implanted in the mother's womb. So, when Baptists and other serious Protestants, by serious, I mean those who judge by biblical standards and not by the standards of the world, when they see Catholic teaching and now understand its truthfulness and its coherence, that's a positive gain for ecumenism.
Okay, I've got 2 minutes. The G7 summit meets in Italy. Pope Francis is going to become the first pope to participate in these talks. He'll have bilateral meetings with Joe Biden, as well as Zelensky and Macron and others. Francis will also speak on the dangers of artificial intelligence. Father, your thoughts on the Pope's participation in these G7 talks, and what, if any, difference he'll make there?
Well, I think it's good that the Pope addressed world leaders, and doing so as a group, but then individually, it's an opportunity to, call forth the gospel message of truth and obedience to God's law. So I think that's all to the good. Now, the question is, of course, will these people be challenged on the specifically horrible things that they're doing, often trying to justify the name of Christianity? And in the case of President Biden, he's the guy who recently made the sign of the cross at a pro-abortion rally. I hope he gets called out on that, because President Biden continues to maintain the fiction that he's a devout Catholic while supporting abortion. And that really is the human rights issue of our time. So I hope the Pope addresses that question.
He's also meeting, the Pope is, with Trudeau in Canada. I hope he talks about the desecration and destruction of churches, which is an ongoing problem there, and the narrative that created this situation. That all needs to be addressed by Trudeau, and the Pope can help there. Before we run out of time, Pope Francis at his weekly audience asked priests, Father, I mean you, Padre, to keep those homilies short, like under 8 minutes. He says after that time, attention is lost and people fall asleep. Father, did you set your timer for morning mass is my question.
In general, I'm in favor of short sermons. In fact, my mom said that to me, keep the sermon short. So I agree with the Pope. But there are times and places where a good 15, 20-minute sermon does a lot of good. So it's not universal, but, no one ever talked himself out of favor unless they went too long. So knowing limits is not a bad thing.
No, I agree. But Father, it's a little bit like TV. It's not the thing itself, it's who's doing it. If the person doing it, the homilist is intriguing and interesting, you could sit with them for an hour. If they're not, keep it brief. Thank you, Father Jerry, for keeping it brief for us, though you can always go on and exceed your time on this show. For more commentary from Father Murray, you can go to thecatholicthing.org. Father, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Raymond.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, parliamentary elections just wrapped up in the European Union, and while the political centrists remain in control, the right made enormous gains, while liberal and green groups lost some influence. What has caused the shift, and what will these results mean for the future of the EU. With analysis, I'm joined by the director of the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation, Nile Gardiner. Thank you for coming back.
It's great to be here.
Great to see you again. I want to talk about these. You've called these elections a political earthquake in Europe. Give our viewers a sense of why this is happening and what convinced these voters in Europe to move to a different choice, move to the right.
Well, Raymond, thanks very much for having me on the show today. Great pleasure to be here. And I would say there are several key factors behind this political earthquake in Europe. And it is a political earthquake. Mm-hmm. These are seismic changes that are taking place across much of Europe, especially Western Europe, and some really big changes ahead. So I think the most important factor, undoubtedly, is mass migration into Europe, legal and illegal. And this is the number one issue for European voters. It's the number one issue, of course, here in the United States. Yeah. And I think that the Biden White House is going to be very nervous looking at these developments.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Yes. Is this a harbinger of what we're going to see in the United States?
I think
it seems to be the same currents driving these elections.
I think it is. And the issue of mass migration, especially large-scale Islamic migration into Europe, this is by far the most important issue facing European voters today. And it impacts elections in France, Germany, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium. Every single country, certainly in Western Europe, directly impacted by this, because Europeans are concerned that their countries are being changed beyond recognition as a result of mass migration. And some of this is illegal, some of it's legal. But it's a huge problem. So that is by far the most important single issue. But there are other issues as well. A rejection, of course, of far left-wing environmental policies, and several other key factors as well, which we can discuss.
But those are the key drivers here. I mean, in France, you saw Macron almost instantly reacting by calling these snap elections.
Yes.
What is happening there? Is this his attempt to rally sort of the moderate parties against Marine Le Pen and her very conservative party there?
Well, so Le Pen's National Rally actually pulled in over 31% of the vote.
Right.
Emmanuel Macron's party pulled in around 14 to 15%, and so it was a humiliation for Macron. And Macron is a very arrogant politician. He did not take this defeat well, and he called this snap election with the idea that somehow he's going to do really well in the parliamentary elections. 2 stages, the end of June, early July. But most polls show that Macron's heading for another big defeat.
Wow. What do you make of the reaction you saw in Paris with the left-wing protesters uprising? Is that what you expect we'll see if Trump is victorious in November here?
Yeah, of course. I think on both sides of the Atlantic, the left are absolutely horrified at the idea that their grip on power is now being challenged. And I think you're going to see the same kind of reaction, of course, in the United States if Donald Trump wins re-election. And the left don't really like democracy very much, and they don't like results that go against them. So, you're going to see the same kinds of howls of outrage in America that you're seeing right now in Europe.
Did you happen to catch the opening of the G7 when the leaders came in? There was this moment where Joe Biden walks in and he's with the other world leaders, and he's almost being led off the dais, Niall. And it struck me, the image of that, the United States literally being led by the hand.
Yes.
What does that image convey to you, and what message is Europe taking from it?
Yeah.
And China.
I think firstly, it's sad to see these scenes of the U.S. president clearly out of his mind. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has to be led, of course, by Giorgia Meloni, the Italian leader. And this is a humiliation for the United States, the world superpower on the international stage. It is obvious for everyone in Europe to see that President Biden is not fit to be leading the United States for the next 4 years, let alone right now, actually. And so I do think America's enemies as well, from Russia to China to Iran, see Biden as weak, as clueless, and I'm in no doubt that many of our enemies on the world stage are rooting, of course, for another Biden term in office because they see him as such a weak figure.
Niall, the President Biden agreed, along with the G7, but Biden agreed to a 10-year security agreement with Ukraine at the G7 summit, and the president, along with his counterparts, reached a deal to give Ukraine $50 billion in a loan guarantee backed by the United States, and with frozen Russian assets. What on earth does this achieve? And when do these European and American leaders say, we need peace in the region now, and we're not throwing any more dollars at this?
Well, I think that it's really time, of course, for European leaders to step up to the plate on the Ukraine front. The U.S. taxpayer, of course, has carried the overwhelming burden. So far, the Biden administration has no clear strategy for any kind of victory in Ukraine. Biden appears clueless a lot of the time. And I think that the United States needs a very clear strategy for Ukraine. Biden has not presented that at all. And what we see from Biden on the world stage is just confusion. And we see a lack of direction, I think, for U.S. leadership. And, you know, Joe Biden is no Ronald Reagan, is he? And he has no clear-cut vision for U.S. leadership on the world stage. And I'm very concerned about America's leadership in the world with Joe Biden at the helm, frankly.
Well, you wrote a column about this recently, and you're really concerned about the decline of America's dominance. You wrote specifically about the moment of silence offered for the late president of Iran, this misplaced sign of respect for a man widely known as the Butcher of Tehran. Should Biden win another term, how do you see America fitting into the superstructure of the world politics, and how vital are the world's interests to the resurgence of American power?
Yeah, I think if we see another 4 years of the Biden presidency, and it's been an absolute disaster, I think, for the United States, I fear for the future of the free world. I fear for the future of the United States. This is the most left-wing administration in American history. They literally bow down to the mullahs of Tehran, joining a minute's silence for the Butcher of Tehran, a monstrously evil figure, of course, passed away recently. This is the Biden administration. They bow down to the enemies of the free world. Can America and the free world survive 4 more years of Joe Biden and his absolutely appalling lack of leadership? And so I'm very concerned about the future of America. I'm concerned as well about American leadership in the world and the future of the free world with the kind of decline, the relentless decline that we're seeing right now under the Biden presidency.
Well, as you know better than anybody, certainly at this table, having worked with Margaret Thatcher, it is usually the undercurrents happening around the world that are far more important than what we see on the surface, because suddenly, rapidly, the plates can shift because of those strong undercurrents. We saw that with the fall of Russia, of the evil empire during Thatcher and Reagan's time and John Paul II's reign. What are you seeing now? As you watch the Middle East, I just read this story of Saudi Arabia taking the dollar away as the primary instrument of currency when trading petrol. The petrol dollar will no longer use the United States currency, but a mix of the yen, euro, and the United States currency. What does that tell you, and where are we headed?
It's a sign of American decline, and it's decline driven by the Biden administration, who has frankly abandoned many of our closest allies in the Middle East, including Israel. I mean, the treatment of Israel by this administration has been shocking and appalling. A knife in the back for Israel from the Biden administration, and trying to get the Israelis to do a deal with Hamas. Hamas is a monstrously evil terrorist organization that should be completely wiped off the earth. And that's the only message that terrorists understand. And so the Biden administration confuses our allies, not only countries like Israel, but also Great Britain as well. He's treated the British with utter contempt. He has been dismissive of India and Japan. And so it's no surprise that some of our allies look for alternatives to American leadership. And that is really dangerous for America. It's dangerous for the future of the world.
But what about the narrative? And look, I've heard it. I literally heard it on my way to the studio today. I was listening to a radio broadcast that I'll remain nameless. And they were talking about how, during the Trump administration, how the world regarded the United States. They were laughing at the United States. This one commentator was saying, we were not respected. Now we're respected again. Is that an accurate read on where we
I think that's a laughable read. It's the typical analysis that you'll face from left-wing commentators. The reality is that many of America's allies doubt America's leadership today. Joe Biden looks like a Monty Python sketch on the world stage at the moment, actually. And Biden has become a sort of laughing stock And that's very bad, of course, for America's image. Donald Trump, in contrast, was feared by America's enemies and respected by our allies, and that is the reality. He built a lot of very strong partnerships across the world, from London to Japan, to South Korea, to India. And right now, I think that many of our friends and partners really doubt the strength of America's leadership under Joe Biden. And I do think that Biden's presidency has been absolutely catastrophic.
Well, I have to say, watching Giorgia Meloni, of all people, lead the G7,
yes.
This is certainly a new day for Europe.
Yes.
A new day is coming, and maybe one in the United States.
A very positive moment, I think.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Thank
Nile,
you very
thank
much.
you for being here. And Nile Gardiner's commentary can be found at heritage.org. You can follow him at Nile Gardiner. Thank you. Last month, we told you about a new limited release documentary, Jesus Thirsts, The Miracle of the Eucharist. Well, that release was a huge hit, grossing over $2 million at the box office over its 3-day run in early June. Due to popular demand, Fathom Events has scheduled another special release of the movie in select theaters June 18th and 19th. Jesus Thirsts takes viewers on a global journey to rediscover the transformative power of the Blessed Sacrament. And returning to the program to talk about the runaway success is the producer of Jesus Thirsts, Jim Wahlberg. Jim, thanks for being here. Now, according to Fathom, who distributed the film, this is the highest grossing documentary they've had in 2024. It's currently the second highest grossing documentary of the year. In your estimation, what's the success? Why do you think audiences flock to this movie?
Well, I mean, the title of the movie is Jesus Thirst, The Miracle of the Eucharist. But I believe that audiences thirst as well for Jesus. And, I think that people are starved. Catholic people are starved for good quality entertainment. And this is not just entertainment. This is a learning journey, if you will. I've received cards and letters and calls from folks all around the country thanking me, which is an unusual sort of call that you would get for a movie, right? Usually the call is, oh, that was great. I laughed, I cried, whatever it is.
Right.
But I'm getting calls saying, thank you. I learned something that I didn't know. I brought my children and they learned something. And so it's humbling. It's a humbling experience. And, numbers, the numbers are phenomenal, right? To put it in perspective for the audience, right? $2 million really in 2 days, because the theaters drop off considerably after the first 2 days, because the third day is Spanish only, right?
Oh.
So that's a more limited market. But by the 18th, will be the most successful documentary that Fathom has ever released.
Wow.
And so, we're just completely overwhelmed. We are now preparing to release in Canada, Mexico. We're going to go around the world with this film. But I feel strongly that we'll get another encore as well. I think that people are really moved by this film.
I want to give folks a little taste of the film. Here's a bit of Jesus Thirsts. Take a look.
In the Old Testament, God came to us in an ark, but in the fulfillment of that, in the New Testament, we have God now in the flesh. And how was that brought to mankind? In an ark, the womb of Mary.
Christ in the womb of Mary, hidden, silent, vulnerable, utterly dependent. And Christ in the Eucharist, hidden, silent, vulnerable, utterly dependent.
Jim, I've gotten a lot of emails from folks who said, that the film awakened them to the theological and the historical reality of the Eucharist in a way that had escaped them earlier. What are you hearing about the film? I mean, you said you've gotten letters from people. What are they telling you?
Well, Raymond, I just want to say that that clip that you just played, it's touching, right? It's beautiful. The calls we're getting are that this is more than the average film, right? This is a true learning experience. The goal was because of the fact that, let's do a little bit of math, right? So the church is missing 80% of the people that used to be there are gone, right? Completely, right? So now there's the 20% that's left. And out of that 20%, 70% of those people don't believe in the true presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, right? And I feel a lot of that has to do with formation and being badly formed, right? And we don't shy away from the difficulties in the church in this film as well. We feel as though this is our opportunity to help with that formation, right, as lay people. And that's the response we're getting is that people are learning more about the Eucharist. And the goal is that more people will believe in the true presence of Jesus in the Eucharist.
And this re-release is kind of extraordinary. I mean, they're re-releasing the film on June 18th and 19th. What do you, I mean, obviously there is momentum behind the movie, but it had a very limited run, so you could only see it on the big screen for a short amount of time. Now here's a second chance. And so many people tweeted me or sent emails and said, I missed it. I missed the first screening. How can they be sure to get the second screening in?
So same thing, right? So we're on just about the same amount of screens, about 1,000 screens across the United States. If you go to JesusThirstFilm.com, and also if you go to Fathom.com, right, you can find the film. You can find a theater near you, and 2 screenings a day, again, which is phenomenal. Raymond, I went to see the film in Columbus, Ohio, Dublin, Ohio, to be more specific. It was 3:45 in the afternoon, and I said, you know what? I want to go see it again in the theater. And I couldn't get a ticket. It was sold out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Columbus, Ohio, right? So people are reacting. So I strongly recommend pre-buying your tickets. Buy your tickets online and bring friends. I feel like, the first run, we're really preaching to the choir, right? I think we're preaching mostly to a good portion of that percentage that believes in the true presence, right? Now we need to expand from there, right? And I got letters. I got a letter here from a Catholic priest, and old-fashioned U.S. mail. I can't believe it. I never get letters anymore, right? And he said, I saw your film last night with my parish pastoral council, and we were in awe. You did a great job when people leave a movie in silence, processing what they just encountered. I don't think I've ever received a greater compliment in my life.
Yeah, beautiful. It's beautiful. What's next for the movie? I know you said you're going to open this up internationally. What does that mean? How wide are you going to go? Will you distribute it the same way?
Yeah, we're going to go worldwide. We're going worldwide. So we are, as you know, Eduardo Verástegui is an executive producer on the film, and Eduardo will do the Mexican release. And Eduardo, you see how he works, right? He's everywhere all the time. So he'll be going from theater to theater, from city to city in Mexico, promoting this film and really promoting the true presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. And so we'll go across the world. We have sort of a roadmap that we use with our Mother Teresa film, No Greater Love, right? This, I want to tell you that my wife, who's my biggest fan and my biggest critic sometimes, right? I always want to make her happy. And so the first night I was pacing my hotel room knowing she was at the theater, and she called me and she just was so overwhelmed with how beautiful the film was. And she said to me, tell me how it did as in relation to the Mother Teresa film. And I said, it was about 3 times as successful. And she paused for a minute and she said, wouldn't Mother love that? Wouldn't Mother love to just fade into the background, always pointing to Christ? And so I feel like this is all part of God's plan for my life, Raymond. I'm so overwhelmed with the responses that I've received and the fact that people love the film.
Well, it's a lovable film and a beautiful one. Jesus Thirsts, The Miracle of the Eucharist, produced by Jim Wahlberg, returns to theaters nationwide on June 18th and 19th from Fathom Events. As Jim said, visit JesusThirstFilm.com for more information, tickets, and showtimes.
Thank you so much, Jim. Blessings. We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you, Raymond. God bless you.
And the National Eucharistic Congress is only weeks away in Indianapolis, Indiana, July 17th through the 21st. You can sign up to attend. To register, visit EWTN.com/Eucharist, and you'll receive a discounted pass. For those of you not in Indianapolis, or if you're unable to attend in person, EWTN will be streaming live coverage of the National Eucharistic Congress beginning July 17th. That is all the time we have for now. Be sure to catch us next week. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thank you for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo. Bye now.